Hi everyone, we have another viewer submitted story. The writer wishes to remain anonymous and he does not want to give out the location where this incident occurred. And he writes, I've never told this story to anyone to keep people from thinking that my dad was crazy. He says, after finding your channel and seeing that you are willing to keep people's names out of the story, I felt safe sending it to you. I thought this would be the right place to tell what had happened to my dad and my grandpa. I'm going to tell you ahead of time, this is a bit of a sad story, but it's his story and I'm going to tell it to you. As far back as I can remember as a child, my grandpa and dad taught me how to hunt. I was an only child and knew it would be up to me to carry on the family hunting tradition. My grandpa owned some land way up in the mountains, away from everyone and everything. On this land sat an old cabin that was built by my great-grandpa back in the early 1900s. It took about an hour to travel to the nearest house or store, so this was a well-kept private area that no one ever visited except the three of us. There was no electric or phone service at the camp, being as it was so far out in the woods. One learned to be careful because if something happened while at camp or hunting, then you were on your own. There was no way to get any help. When I was 15 years old, we had planned a hunting trip up to the cabin, but I had come down with the flu and could not make the trip, so my grandpa and my dad left home to make that 4-hour drive to our hunting camp. Mom and I told them that we loved them and wished them the best of luck on their week hunting trip, and off they went. 3 days later, we get a call from the county police that something bad had happened there. We were told my dad was in the hospital and in very bad shape. Mom asked, "What about Grandpa? Is he okay?" They did not know anyone else was with my dad, so my mom told them about the camp, and the police were dispatched to go find my grandpa. Mom and I jumped in the car and drove that long trip as fast as we could. Once we got to the hospital, we found out my dad had had a stroke, and they found Grandpa at the cabin. He was covered with claw marks. He was either dead from his wounds or he had had a heart attack before the animal attacked. Somehow, my dad was able to get in the truck and started the drive down the mountain to get help, but he did not make it all the way to town. Someone found him pulled over on the side of the road and took him to the hospital. After a couple of days, my father came to enough to explain what had happened that led to the long investigation. Both men were out in their deer stands hunting when my dad hears the most awful roaring, growling sound down in the woods where Grandpa was sitting. He heard yelling but could not make out what he was saying. Then a gunshot and more yelling came from my grandpa. He then heard sounds from some kind of a wild animal. My dad got out of his stand and ran to Grandpa. Dad was yelling, "Where are you? Where are you? Are you okay?" as he was scanning the area with his gun to his shoulder, trying to figure out what had happened. He could not see Grandpa and did not see anything moving around. It was totally silent when he got there. Dad made his way to Grandpa's stand to find him lying in some brush, and he was bleeding very badly. He picked Grandpa up and headed to the cabin with him over his shoulder. When he reached the cabin, my father collapsed. He had had a stroke. He knew the only way to get help was to try and drive out of there. During the investigation, the police found where Grandpa was sitting. His rifle was broken in half, and the barrel was bent almost into a U shape. Grandpa also had a handful of hair in his fist, and they never found out what kind of animal that this hair came from. There was also a blood trail leading down into the thick swamp, then went up into a tree and then vanished. They took samples of the blood but could not find any kind of match to tell what it had come from. There was a big manhunt put in place for days, but no one found anything other than that blood trail. Eventually, it was classified as a bear attack. Only bad thing about them closing this case as a bear attack is there are no bears in this part of the country. Once we got Dad home, he told me the sounds he had heard, and from the claw marks on Grandpa and the gun being destroyed like that, he firmly believed it was a Bigfoot. There are many rumors from other folks up in those hills saying that they had sighted them before and hear some creepy sounds in the woods at night. My dad made me promise to never go back up to the cabin and to stay away from that place. I have never been back up there since, and we all really miss my grandfather. Guys, that is the saddest story that I've received so far, and I don't know this man, but if you're listening and you're keeping up with my channel, apparently you are. I'm very sorry about your grandfather. I kind of wish I knew when this happened. I'm guessing it was not a recent thing. The family has grieved and moved on, but this is a sad story. Listen, thanks for tuning in, and I'll have another story up soon. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks.